All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call a meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel, and with me are Gail Anderson and Jerry Arnell. The assessor today is Jeremy Pohl, and the administrative personnel is Sally Caulfield. We will be hearing applications for revision of the business assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act and the City of Winnipeg Charter. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit this discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of property is not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order to be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application be brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As informational public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 and 2 on their docket today. Ms. Caulfield, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Jeremy Ryan Pohl.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Agent, please state your full name.
Carson Horsburgh.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome to the business appeal cycle. We will proceed now with the first property, 1285 St. James Street. So, Mr. Pohl, you can begin.
Sure. 1285 St. James Street. Business roll number is 35872. This property, the ARV is for 325,860. The total area is 16,517. The total ARV per square foot is $19.73. The realty was reviewed in full. It was part of the appeal package for the realty side. I reviewed both the agent's submission and the assessor's submission and the board's order. If we look down a little further on the page, we see that it says $7.03 rate was applied. That value was confirmed. So as I go through this, I'm just reviewing the realty and seeing where it falls within the marketplace, if I agree or disagree with the order. But generally speaking, this was a good order. So the $17.03 was part of the realty, obviously, and it was confirmed. So just a bit of understanding for this property. This is a Chamois location. There's one of 3 in the city. It's next to Costco. I've been here from time to time. I usually go to the one over on just off Lodge. But if you look on page 2, we're just going to go over what the property is. Chamois are a full service car wash. You have multiple lines to get in, depending on what price you're paying and what service you're getting. You pick your line. Someone meets you out front. You explain what you want. They give you a pass, and you fall in the line that suits you. This property here, this business location here, the physical makeup is that because you have the convergence of 3 lines, that happens inside the property. If you look at page 3, you have the ability to clean your car, power wash it first if you're going with that package. So what you have is, as you come in, it's 3 bays. They consider, I believe, 2 cars in each bay, and then it bottlenecks to where you get towards the actual car wash. So if you look through page 4, just shows the location again, right across from Costco, right off of St. James. Page 5 and onward is just showing the physical makeup of the property. It's a good quality car wash. There's very few like it in the city. When you're inside, they have washrooms. You have your general retail that you sell related to your operation of your car wash. Page 6, 7, page 8 shows you can rest while they detail your car, while they wash your car and detail your car. So again, just a general idea of what it is. When you, on page 11, you go to page 11, when you're picking up your car, you walk out of the bay, or into the bay, I should say. And again, there's 3 lines that it converges back into. So you have an option of drawing your car. Again, you'd be detailing the inside of your car if you choose that package, but it is inside. So in inclement weather, cold weather, this is a big advantage. When it's not cold out today, pretty nice out there today, but when it's -20, -30, and you want a car wash, this is a big advantage for operation of a car wash. So with that said, you can see on the next pages 12 and 13 are just again, an empty bay, but also on page 13 the cars that are in there. These are simply internet photographs, and it just shows the detail operations of it. So on the next few pages over, just shows what I was speaking to, the Chamois company profile straight off their website. Very well run business, no questions there. They have their packages. It's not a coin operated business where you're just simply using the line yourself. You don't do that here. It's a full service car wash. So there is 3 locations on page 17, and again, we're dealing with the 1285 St. James, so it's well branded throughout the city. And I'll just the different packages stop on page 20. So when I look in the marketplace, I look and see what the agent comps are for the retail, or for the realty, and for obviously the assessor. One comparable they missed, both, was the most comparable to the subject property. And I'll get into that now. I'm starting on page 21. The only other one in the city that kind of competes with this business, Chamois, is the one just off of Kenniston and Rothwell. It is Northern Lights Car Wash. It was started operation about 2018, I think. It is a full service, as you can see. It has lesser exposure to an extent, meaning you're not on Kenniston, but everybody can see it driving by Kenniston. You just turn into the industrial park, you hang a right, and it's basically about 10-15 seconds down the lane. So you can see it. There's no issues with exposure. Anyone who wants a car wash, this is a good high profile area, similar to the locations for Chamois, especially next to Costco, where you do have a lot of business commerce. On the next pages, just show the operations of that one, of the comparable that the main comparable it is. So basically you drive in, you loop around, and you go straight into the car wash. There is no lineup where you can segregate out. It's just basically a drive-through car wash. So you go in, you pay, you select what you want, and then it's just a straight line out. But you can come around, and on page 24 shows that they do have vacuuming, they do have cleaning, they do offer that, but again, it's outside, and they don't do it for you. It is done by the car owner, done by the customer, so to speak. And then on page 25 just shows the actual car wash itself. So pretty standard stuff. Good location, very similar to the subject property. with the exception that there's a bit of an advantage given we're in colder the city that for 4 or 5 months a year, it's advantageous to have a ability to move your vehicles inside and do all that detailing, do all that customer care under a heated roof, so to speak. So on page 23, the build was in 2000. Sorry, I misspoke there. The building was built in 2000. The lease agreement would have been in place about a year and a half earlier than that. But the lease itself started March 6, 2020, and it's a 20-year lease. It's for $18.25 a square foot for the startup for their first term. So that's right, approaching the reference date. It's as close as you're going to get for very good comparable, almost identical comparable, with the exceptions of the utility of the heated spaces that such a property offers. So with that said, this is the comparable that I would be using. The other comparables that we have, and I'll go over the order and I'll go over the realty if you need. But on page 27 is the order, or sorry, 26 and 27 is the order. Basically, the realty was confirmed. And part of the realty, just to confirm what the rent rate was, if you follow through, it will be on page for the assessor. On page 32 of my brief or page 6 of his brief, it's also labeled. So it's the same $17.03. So with that, $18.25 is the best comparable you could say, given the location and given the heated space that a chamois should go for maybe a little bit more, but I'm very comfortable given the market is at $18.25 for the comparable that I brought in. That should be, the model should be applied and the board order was a good order. So moving on to the agent's submission, we can see on page 37, there are a number of comparables. They had $13.93 weighted at, for an average and median of $12.13. And again, these are for comparables that are sort of similar, but not like the one I just reviewed. And then when we get back to the assessor's comparables, that's on page 5 of his brief or page 31 of mine. Same idea. These are similar, but I shouldn't say not quite similar, but the best that you can bring in. And I'll just basically go over that now. City of Winnipeg, if you develop a site for a car wash, you're owner occupier. You're not going to be leasing it out typically because the cost of actually operating the business itself is so minimal that you would just want to capture all the profit that the site generates. So whether you have a coin-based operation, which they typically are, one-based, you do it yourself, you pay per whether Visa or coin or time, typically they run their own business. So comparables aren't going to be as numerous as you might like. And that's why the agent brought in what they brought in. And that's why the system brought in what they brought in last time. But having said that, I think the comparable that I reviewed, the Northern Lights car wash is bang on as you're going to get. So with that, I'm open to questions.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Horsburgh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pohl, just a couple of questions for you. Mostly just pertains to the rent comparables that have been used to justify the business assessment. So if we're looking on page 31, I note that comparable 3, comparable 5, I think just comparable 3 and comparable 5 are car washes. Is that right?
Comparable 3, comparable 5, and comparable 9. I've done all the car wash analysis for a number of years for the city. So yes, that would be, the other ones are SKP related, or there's a car wash on site with a gas station. Again, they're similar, but the best comparisons that you could bring in. That's again for another appeal for the realty. And part of my review is if I know a better comparable for this appeal, I'm obviously going to be bringing it in, which would be the Northern Lights car wash.
Okay, so I note that you've got the Northern Lights car wash. So we've got 4 car wash comparables. Is that right?
The main one I'm using is Northern Car Wash. let me be very clear. I wasn't part of the realty appeal on either end of it. There, Johnny did a good job. Mr. Spacek did a good job. You did your end of it. I reviewed the data that was presented to the panel. I agreed with the order with the data that was presented with the panel. This is a new hearing de novo, and I'm bringing in the best comparable that I see as from market, and it's the most similar. So 1825 is right in line with what the model is. I'm not going to ask for $1 or so increase. So.
Okay, yeah, no, I recognize that it's de novo as well. I also wasn't involved in the realty appeal. I mean, I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight on the board's order. It has been appealed to the municipal board. And again, the municipal board appeal will be de novo and no weight will be given to the board's order.
I wouldn't say that necessarily. I mean, you can review, every hearing is de novo, but you can review what was done in the past to get you there. And whether they want to put any weight on it or not, that's up to them. I've had it go either way. But given this, different appeals, but given this hearing for business assessment appeal, it's a pretty simple one. The best comparison wasn't brought before the board. I'm doing that now.
Okay, so I guess I just want to clear this up. So we have the one comparable that's getting 18.25 a square foot. It's located in Tuxedo. It's located in the wealthiest and newest part of town. And then we have this older property. The subject property is older. And then if we look at the rent comparables for car washes, they seem to be ranging more like $9 to $15 a square foot. So I guess my question is that why has no weight been given to these other car washes when they're similar as well?
No, they're not. They're very dissimilar. They're not. They're the best evidence that the assessor brought forth, including from your side of the table, side of the room, so to speak, that was brought in. I'm telling you the best comparison, which is True Northern Lights car wash. Just because it wasn't brought before the board at a realty hearing doesn't mean it can't be presented today. And that is the most suitable. St. James is a heavy business commerce area. There's lots of economic opportunity there. It's very similar to Kenison, if not a little less, simply because it's in an industrial park. But I'm making it clear with the exposure that you do have, you can see it. There's a little lake in front of it. It's off in the back, but you can clearly see it. To turn in one light and hang a right isn't that far. People will be able to do that, no problem. At this location for the subject property, you're right next to Costco on St. James. You have a ton of exposure. There's lineups to get into this place. I'm a frequent. I go in this one, and I go on Rangers as well. The amount of vehicles that go through this place warrant the design of it, meaning 3 lanes coming in and 3 lanes leaving. I don't see the other comparables that were brought in by the agent or the assessor as really a better suited comparable. True North, or I should say Northern car wash is the best comparison. So let me be clear on that.
Okay, so are you asking that myself, the board, to place any weight on the rent comparables on page 31?
No, let me be very clear. Those were 2 other parties' briefs with an order attached to it. We're reviewing that order today and seeing if it's appropriate still to carry forward with the order or change. And this is a new de novo hearing. I'm bringing in the board the best comparison. If they want to put weight on what was said last time, they can, or if they want to put weight on the comparison that I'm bringing in, which is the most appropriate comparable, they can. It's up to the panel.
Okay, so I guess I just want to be clear. So your evidence disclosure, you're justifying the assessed rental rate with a single comparable. Is that right?
Let me be.
Well, I think that's clear. Are you not justifying it based on this single comparable?
I'm telling the panel, and I'm telling yourself, there's a total of 4 full service car washes similar to this in the city. Chamois got 3 of them. Northern Lights is the 4th one, and only 1 rents, which is Northern Lights. That is the best indicator of market for something like the Chamois, which is, again, got a bit better utility for a paying customer to go to, and obviously business to operate on.
Okay, and have you been to the Northern Lights car wash?
I have driven by it. I have gone into it. I wasn't able to go through it because the line was too long and I didn't want to wait. But we
Do
do
you
have
know,
photos.
sorry, do you know, in looking at that lease, do you know if any of the infrastructure was included in that lease?
I'm
Or did
just
they just
reporting
get the
what they're reporting
frame?
to us. It's a true net lease fully. I reviewed the data. I put it in the brief. That's all I have indicated from the INEs.
Right, but the Chamois and the Northern Lights, like this is a very high tech, like new car wash. So I would imagine that there's some infrastructure, some of the washing equipment that's included in this lease.
I can't comment on that. If there is that element to it, I can't comment. I don't see any information in your brief. But as far on that, but as far as a paying customer, you're not buying it. You're just getting your car washed. You're just using the car wash facilities to wash your car. This is very good comparison to the Chamois, which does, again, operates a little bit differently because you do have 3 bays, 3 lines to get in and out, and you can detail your car and so forth and climatize your car a little bit better when you go there. But it's very similar. I don't see why there wouldn't be weight given to this in full.
Okay, no further questions on my end. Thank you.
Okay, Gail, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, Mr. Annell, any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, question I have, I'm familiar with the Chamois, having used it more than several times. Um, is the actual wash area air conditioned?
It's heated, it's climatized. There's doors. Whether they choose to run it or not, I couldn't say. If I'm operating it, perhaps if the doors are open all day, I'm not turning the air conditioner on, right? If you're running it during the wintertime, those doors open and shut, you have to have your heater on. You have to have, obviously heating it. I couldn't comment on that part of it. I would think that would be, but maybe for operational standpoint, I wouldn't be running it necessarily.
Yeah, okay, because I know they have the retail area there as well,
I
which would
should say that.
obviously be air conditioned.
No, that's air conditioned. I've been in that. But like if you open the bays from one end to the other, you're still not going to have enough airflow through there. You need a high volume HVAC system to be clearing out the humidity in there. So that's running all the time. As far as the air conditioning, what they're setting it to, as far as a comfortable use for their staff, I would say, perhaps. I would assume it will get really hot in there. So I guess it all depends on what the weather is at the time and how they want to run the facility.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hosborough, your presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hardin. I should also make the panel aware that I've submitted rebuttal for this property as well.
Okay.
But if
Would you be able to get that sent to me?
One moment, please.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll deal with your presentation first, followed by questions and then your rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Hardin. So if the board will follow me to page 3, we've already heard quite a bit about the car wash and its operations. I'm not going to speak to that. I think Jeremy did a good job of covering that. The property has been assessed with a total annual rental value of $325,860. In looking at the market and looking at similar properties, M&P's determined an appropriate market rate of $13 a square foot, which equals to an annual rental value of $259,316. If the board will follow me through to page 4 of the disclosure, we have the business assessment calculations with an assessed rental rate of $17.03 per square foot. On page 5, I've included the assessment breakdown as well as M&P's requested valuation. I can see we're not disputing the occupancy costs. We are disputing the assessed rental rate. Page 6 has the assessment map and aerial photograph. And then on page 7, we have exterior photographs of the property. Page 8 is where I want to bring the board's attention. Unlike the assessor, when I'm valuing a property, I don't have tunnel vision. I don't look at one property and say, well, if this one property leases for this, therefore all car washes should lease for this as well. I've actually looked at about 10 different car washes or car washes or vehicle service garages, and properties offer the same utility as the subject property. And we can see that the rents range from $9 to $20 a square foot, with an average just shy of 13 a square foot and a median just over $12 a square foot. So in looking at these properties, we can see that despite one property maybe that leases for $18 a square foot, a majority of properties like the subject lease around $12 a square foot. So looking at the subject, determining 13 a square foot is pretty reasonable looking at the market. Now pages 9 through 14 just has a map including locations of the comparables. And then pages 10 through 14, I've just included photographs of the properties. I will note that 1361 and 830 McLeod are both car washes, fully operational, as well, and the rest of those properties, those are more automotive garages, properties that theoretically could offer the same utility as a car wash. But certainly want to bring the board's attention to 1361 McPhillips, as well as 830 McLeod Avenue, as those are both car washes. And then I would conclude my presentation on page 15. Again, just pointing to the requested rental rate, looking at the assessed rate versus what reasonable market rate is based on a number of comparables. And with that, I would welcome any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions, Mr. Pohl. You're muted.
There we go.
Okay.
Let's start with the comparables on page 10. 3331 Portage. Is this a full service car wash?
No, it's not.
So the reason for the business being here is completely distinct and separate from an actual full service car wash.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
It's separate. The business here and the commerce generated here is completely separated and distinct from a full service car wash.
I've selected comps based on the utility that they would offer. So a vehicle service garage could offer. Well, I'm going to answer your question. You've asked a question. I'm going to answer it. I'd appreciate it if you didn't interrupt me. It offers the same utility. I run into the same problem you run into, where there are few comparables for properties like this. So you look at what the car wash operations. A service garage has the bay doors. It can offer the same utility that a car wash would.
Right. 1315 Henderson. Is this a full service car wash?
No, I believe that one is a gas station. There might be a car wash component to it.
Same as 111 Chevier and 1429 Clarence.
Yes, I've included photos in my disclosure.
I'm going through them in the comparisons that you're getting through, and I'm just making clear they're vehicle service, sales, and related. I'm going to touch, correct, all the way up until 1361.
Yes, their vehicle service, I think VSW is
1361 McPhillips. I'm aware of it. Been there. This is a very old lawn drive-up car wash situated behind Northgate Mall in a back lane access to get to it.
I've been there as well. Do you have a question?
I'm just confirming this with you. It's not a full service car wash. It's ha-
Not to the extent that the chamois where you can buy a package, that's correct.
It has very poor access.
I wouldn't agree with that.
How do you access this?
You can access it via the mall or via off of McPhillips there. I've been to this car wash.
Yes, you access this at the back end of the lot from Northgate Mall. You don't see it from the side. You don't see it from the street. And there's an opportunity to access it from a lane from a residential street that you have to fish around to get to. Would you consider this the same exposure as being next to a Costco?
I would say that this property has worse exposure. Yes.
Significantly worse exposure to the point where a full service car wash wouldn't entertain the idea of being developed here.
Well, that's you speculating that.
Okay. If we go over to similar to 1761 Pamela, not a car wash, vehicle service related. 830 McLeod. I've been in this one as well. I go here frequently. It is drive through from behind. You go around the site to come in through the back, and it is a wand operated self-service car wash.
That's right.
So as far as any of your comparables that you don't have a full service car wash comparison.
That's correct.
Okay. And the reason for that is simply because you're unaware of the one that I brought in today, or that there was only that one. There is no other one out there that actually rents.
I think you and I have the same data. Yeah.
Okay. With that said, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions. Thanks for your presentation.
Okay, do any of your comparables include a retail component?
I'm not certain off the top of my head. The ones that are more vehicle service related that aren't car washes, they would have a retail component. I have been inside both the McPhillips and McLeod location. McPhillips, no retail component. McLeod, there's just a small little office. There's no real retail component.
All right, thank you. Now you said you had rebuttal. Do we have it, Ms. Caulfield?
I have put it in the SharePoint folder. And I have also emailed it to the assessor.
I have it. Thank you.
I have it.
Okay,
Thank you.
here we go. All right. So on your rebuttal, Mr. Horsburgh.
Well, I don't know if I need to go into the rebuttal too much. I was under the impression that the assessor was basing or justifying the assessed rent on the list of 11 rent comparables that were included. But seeing as the assessor is really just basing the assessed value or the assessed rent on the one North Star car wash, I don't think there's a whole lot to say in my rebuttal. Just if they're not justifying the rent based on those comps, I don't really need to rebut those comps. But I will just, I guess, bring the board's attention to it's page 7 of my rebuttal. Comparables 10 and 11, 705 Osborne, 1567 Arlington. Those properties were both sold in 2021. So as of the reference date, those leases weren't in place. But other than that, I don't think I need to go into my rebuttal too much, given that no weight is really being placed on those 11 comparables.
Okay, questions, Mr. Poole?
No, I think rationale that he provided was good. I'm presenting the board order in context as we do business assessment appeals for these, right? With what was presented at the realty hearing. I reviewed it, and obviously the rent is at play here today. That was what was brought in by another assessor and another agent. So here I'm relying on what the most comparable market comparison is. And the rebuttal is obviously geared towards what was already presented for a different hearing. So with that, I don't think I need to go into it. Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Anderson, any questions on the rebuttal?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Arnell?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go on to 1027 Springfield then. All right, you can begin, Mr. Pohl.
1 second, please. Sorry.
Okay.
Had a brief stick to another brief and I was looking for it. It happens. It happens. Address is 1027 Springfield. Business roll number is 42049. The total annual rental value is $80,220. Total area of the property is 4,840 square feet, and we have an overall ARV per square foot of $16.57 a square foot. This is on Springfield. I know the properties along there. This is right where, I guess, when you used to be able to drive down Springfield, right where they kind of closed it off. So it's coming right off Lajamodi. You're about a block away-ish. And there's a number of vehicle service related properties along that little strip. So it is in a good location. It does have good exposure. It's well known. It's been suited as such for far back as I can remember for that little node that's there. So if we look, we have $14.24 applied to that. Applied to it. That is also part of we do have another, obviously, realty hearing that's tied to this. If we look at page 2, the order starts. Again, Mr. Spacek handled it. On page 3 shows that the board confirmed the assessment. Page 4, starting on the assessors for that hearing. Page 1 is the realty here submission for that hearing. We see the pictures of the property on page 2. Just like I indicated, it's on the node of Springfield as it was closed off. And it is a vehicle service related property. Again, and around there, pretty much it's all vehicle service related for that. So it's a little cluster of properties. This is one of them. We look on page 5, the comparisons that they have put forth in that hearing. Average $15.05, weighted average $12.46, and a median of $12.95. And that is again throughout the city in similar areas where there's that kind of commerce as well. So we have $14.24 for the income stream on page 6. And obviously the board confirmed that. On the next page over is the start of the submission from the agent. And the rents that were used are on page 13. And again, between $9.30 average and median of $8.99. So we go back to the front of the page, at the front of my brief, the $14.24 I think is reasonable. I think it was defended at the obviously the retail hearing, or the retail realty hearing. And I don't see any need to change it here today. So I'm asking for the board to confirm the value here today for the business assessment as well. Thank you. For that, I'm open to questions.
Questions, Mr. Husborough?
Thank you, Mr. Hardin. Before I ask my questions to Mr. Pohl, Sally, I've just realized my name is Mr. Hornsborough.
Oh.
It's already a mouthful. Yes, add another consonant, and no one's ever going to be able to pronounce it.
Sorry, that's what popped up on my Zoom and I thought, okay.
Oh, I'm just keeping you on your toes, maybe.
Oh, much appreciated. I love criticism.
Thank you, Sally.
I will fix that right away.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, so back to business. So I guess, Mr. Pohl, just looking at your disclosure, this page 1, is this the entirety of your evidence? Is the rental rate, is it just based on the previous assessor's comps, or?
Just so we're clear, I'm using the previous assessor's comps now. They are warranted. It is very similar locations. There's a range for obviously ESGs, and it fits within the board order. So I'm asking for the board to confirm the $14.24 based on the comps that the agent, the assessor brought in. I feel they're very reasonable.
Okay, no, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. So then if we move on to page 8, that's the rent comparable page from the realty appeal. I just note that weighted average $12.46, median $12.95, both lower than the assessed rate. Is that correct?
The weighted average is $12.46. The median is $12.95, and the average is $15.05.
Okay, can you speak to the weighted average? Where does the weight come into play here? Just like square footage divided by.
Wait. Okay. Average is simply taking the average of the numerical rent. Weighted average is applied to the actual square foot and divided by the total populace of the comps. And then the median is simply the median. When you get all three of those, it's a better numeric than simply relying on an average. And a weighted average is something that you look to when you're reviewing property. Now, obviously, it's better suited to larger commercial properties like towers, downtown towers, so to speak, larger retail formats. On the smaller VSGs, there's more of a variance. Clearly, whenever you work on a VSG-related group of properties, there is a big variance here. With what the assessor brought in, it's a good sample of that. And I do think the model at $14 rate around there is reasonable. So.
Okay, well, no, thank you for explaining that. I often see these rent comparable tables, but we don't often have an average and a weighted average. So thank you for speaking to that. I don't actually have too many questions. I think we're fairly close. We've really just looked at very similar comparables, and I think that would conclude my questions. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Arnell, questions?
Actually, it's been answered. Thanks.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, your presentation, Mr. Horsburgh.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. I'll also make the panel aware that I've submitted rebuttal for this property as well.
Okay.
Okay, so if the board will follow me, beginning on page 3 of the disclosure, subject property, annual rental value of $80,220. MNP has valued the subject property, and we've determined that an appropriate rental rate would be about $13 per square foot. Now it's been assessed at $14.24 a square foot. As you can see on page 4, we have the breakdown provided by the assessment department. And then on page 5, we have MNP's breakdown as well. No disputes over the costs to occupy, just a matter of deciding an appropriate market rent for the property. So on page 6, we have the assessment map and aerial photograph. Page 7, we have exterior photos. And on page 8, we have the rental comparables. So we do see variation in terms of rental rates for vehicle service related properties. This property in particular is in a very poor location access wise. It is at the end of a dead end road, essentially zero visibility from traffic. Only way you're going to see it is if you're driving down to the end of a dead end road. These comparables that I have are all superior in terms of their location and their access. So asking for $13 a square foot, it's not as low as perhaps 1870 King Edward, but it's a newer property, 2645 Pembina, okay, better location, older property. Looking at these comparables, $13 a square foot makes sense. More than that doesn't make a lot of sense. So now I've included on page 9 just a map of the comparable lease locations. So you can see I've sampled from all over the city in an attempt to find a decent representative market rent for the subject. And then pages 10 through 13 have photographs of those comparables. And again, on page 14, just summarizing the requested annual rental value of $74,245 based on a market rent of $13 per square foot. And with that, I would welcome any questions. Thank you very much.
Questions, Mr. Poole?
Just a bit for the exposure. You're aware that there's 6 separate businesses running out of the cluster of vehicle service related properties here at the end of Springfield here, just before Lajimodi.
I've been to the subject property.
Okay. You've driven by them then, obviously.
Yes.
Are you aware of any vacancies that occurred here in any recent years leading up to the reference date?
Sort of vacancy with regard to the subject property?
Meaning they're all signs, they're all businesses operating vehicles. There wasn't any vacant spaces advertised. There wasn't something showing a lack of demand for those businesses.
I didn't conduct like a full study. I visited the location, Jeremy.
No, but typically when you drive by, you see a vacant sign. There's a lease agent if it is vacant, or you see a building that's occupied with signage. Did you notice any vacancies when you reviewed the subject property as you evaluated the location?
I wasn't out searching to find a property for lease. I wasn't looking for lease signs. I wasn't looking for vacancy signs. I went to view the property.
Would I suggest? Well, I'll just blatantly say it. There was no vacancy. There hasn't been any vacancies here. Would that not be a good indicator of market exposure? Where you're saying it's less than, if several operating businesses are operating vehicle service related businesses and there's no vacancies, would that not be an indicator that it's a good location?
I'm not going to speculate. If you have some data, I'll speak to that, but I'm not going to speculate.
Okay. It is owner occupied, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
And it has always been owner occupied as far back as I've looked.
Yes, I believe it was only constructed within the last few years.
Yeah. All right. That's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Hey, Ms. Anderson, any questions?
Yes, you mentioned that the access to it is weak. If you could just speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So if we move to page 6, I think that's probably how you get the best visual. So on page 6, we can see this is Springfield Road here, and it's a dead end. That's just a way to turn around there at the end. So Springfield is a dead end road. So it's at the end of this dead end road. Whereas like most comparables, like if you look at Portage, Chevrier, St. Mary's, you can access it. There's traffic going by back and forth in front of it. Versus this property, the only way you'd find it is if you were looking for it. You're not going to stumble across it. It's at the end of a dead end road, so the access to it isn't as good as if you were on a major traffic artery.
Okay, and so the cluster of other businesses that are there, they have the same type of access as this one. So they all have a limitation. Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Okay, Mr. Arnell.
No questions, thanks.
Okay, your rebuttal, Mr. Horsburgh.
Thank you, Mr. Hardin.
Let me just
everyone ready?
Let me just make sure I got it. Probably have to renew. Okay. Here we go. All right.
Okay, thank you. So if we start on page 4, I guess I should speak to why does MNP submit rebuttal? Why do I submit rebuttal? And especially the stakes are quite low here. We're not talking about a huge business assessment by any means. But as per the Municipal Assessment Act, the onus is on the assessment department to justify their assessed value. So in this case, we have a number of rent comparables that aren't representative. Some are. I'd say actually the majority of the rent comparables are representative. But I have selected 3 of the rent comparables that I don't feel represent what a market rent would be for the subject property. So I'm starting on page 4, 331 Portage Avenue. This property is rented for about $20 a square foot. 5 bay doors. So, if you're running an automotive shop, you can only service as many cars as you have bay doors. So with 5 bay doors versus 2, well, you can service more vehicles with 5 doors than you can with 2 doors. Access, you're right on Portage. People are driving by you all the time. You're not at the end of a dead end road. You can access this site via Muriel Street or via Portage. And the location is superior. You're on Portage. You've got thousands of vehicles passing you by every day. Versus being on the end of a dead end road, you don't get that sort of vehicle traffic. You don't get that kind of exposure. Moving on to page 5, comparable 4, 721 Watt Street. This is a vehicle service garage, but it's also a domo. So I don't feel that the subject property would be able to rent for what a gas station would rent for, in addition to having an automotive shop. So I don't feel that that property is representative either. And then comparable 5, again, and this is on page 6, superior in terms of the bay doors, 5 versus 2. Again, superior access and superior location being on a major roadway. And with that, I welcome any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions, Mr. Poe?
Just seems location is an issue here. I'll phrase this the right way. Whether you have one car bay door, a singular door to get in, or you have a bigger door to let in, you have multiple bays in this property, right? So you can service multiple cars. Whether you have a door or 4 smaller doors, the same amount of volume of work can be done in this property, correct?
No, I wouldn't say the same volume of work. Like you look at your Mr. Lubes, you look at your Midas, you look at a lot of these automotive shops, you're in, you're out. You're not in one door, you can move you around into a bay, jack you up, jack the other person down, move this car around, move that one out, move it in, move it out. If you have the doors in, out, in, out, in, out, that's far superior than having one door in, move it around, have to try to juggle all these cars around in a small area.
Okay, let's back up a little bit here. This is an oil lube location. This is a vehicle service garage, correct? The subject property?
That's correct.
So lube doors, typically you get a couple extra doors because you're driving in and you're driving out from the rear and from the back, or from the front, I should say. This property here, you drive in through the main door and you have a bay to work on. You have a number of bays to work on. So there is no limit here as far as a singular door or multiple doors where you'd have a drive-through style.
Well, there's limits in terms of the utility that the property can offer the market.
What limit is barrier here?
Well, I'm saying it's more attractive if you have the easy in out versus the system of one door in, move them all around.
Look at your page 3, or sorry, will they be on my page 3 or your page? Your subject property photo on your page. Sorry, I don't. Do you not have a subject property photo on in your brief? You can just use my page 3 if you need to. I don't think you put it.
Sorry,
do you have a subject?
Asking me a question?
Do you have a subject property photo in your brief?
Oh,
I don't think it did. You could use mine if you like.
If you go to page 7, I do.
Page 7?
Yeah.
All right, let me fix that. There we go. So you have a large overhead door. You can get volume through there. You can get large vehicles through there. There's no limitation. If you look to the side, you have another large door of similar size. If anything, this has a greater utility than the comparable that you referenced in your rebuttal, because it has very small doors, which is residential vehicles. That not be correct?
Could you repeat the question?
Your subject property has significant size doors compared to the comparable. Your subject property can get through residential vehicles, can get through larger commercial vehicles. You have a greater utility here. You're saying that comparable has a greater utility because it has smaller doors and several of them compared to 2 versus 4. This subject property has a large commercial door at either end of the building, which allows commercial fleet vehicles through as well. You have a greater utility here.
I wouldn't say that they have a greater utility. They have a different utility.
All right. As far as your next comparable, the Domo, there's an SKP for the Domo, yes, but there's an auto clinic behind it. That's the comparable. Would you not see the Domo in front as a deterrent to someone who perhaps wouldn't want a Domo on site, but they're still collecting that rent?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Would you see a Domo on site as a deterrent from an auto clinic or a VSG having to share a site?
As a deterrent?
Meaning, if there was no Domo up front, you could get a better rate for the auto clinic. Is there a Domo on the subject property? Is there a car?
The subject property does not have a gas station.
So there is no deterrent as far as commerce that can occur on site. You have the sole site. You don't have to share it with somebody.
That's correct.
Okay. And Tony's, I know this one well. This one comes up in appeal numerous times. I've been here. You don't show the building next to it, but right where your photo ends, there's a large wall for another VSG that's on the other side, and it's a very tight turnaround to get in here. Would you not see that as an impediment for the lease rate that you could get? Meaning it would be a lower rent versus if you had what the subject property has, which has a decent enough site where you can park your vehicles on site. You can get access from both sides.
Have you measured the turning radius on the Tony's site?
It's maybe 25 feet.
Okay, have you measured it? You know that for a fact?
I drive by it every day. I've been on site. I've had it under appeal. It's maybe 25 feet.
I don't have that information in front of me.
I'm just curious as to why this one was highlighted without obviously the wall impeding the clientele from coming in. There's no ability to park on this site. It would get a lesser rent versus the subject property.
It's your opinion. I'm sorry, is there a question here?
Well, I'm asking you why you wouldn't show the vehicle service dealership or the vehicle service VSG right next to it. You cut the photo off without showing the impediment.
One of our analysts pulls these photos for us.
So are you? So you're not aware that this site has obviously issues with your vehicles having to come in and do a very tight turn to get into the bay, and no on-site parking.
Again, I'm not aware.
Okay. That's the only questions I had. Thank you.
Hey, questions, Mr. Arnell, on the rebuttal?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions, thank you.
All right, I think that concludes this property. So does either party wish a summation?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
This cluster of properties here was developed back before there was an extension to Chief Peguis. Used to go right through obviously from Henderson, or I should say, yeah, Henderson to here, to Elijah Modi. It was closed off. It's been a number of years since. There's been no vacancies that have occurred within those cluster of properties. We see no change of use, meaning the buildings were renovated or vacant for some time. They changed use to retail. They converted it to other things. It's been a very strong performing area, a little cluster that's there. This site exposure, although it's not on Elijah Modi itself, as you see on either end of it, you don't have on that end commerce coming off of it. There's no C2, there's no C3. You are going to be a roadway over. You are going to be a street over kind of thing all the way along there. Given that there's been no vacancies here, these buildings are all being occupied, all being continually businesses of vehicle service related in there, as well as not just fleet vehicles, not oil lubes. They do commercial building. They do commercial fleet vehicles as well, as you can see by the overhead doors. So you have a better economic opportunity now on this site, on these sites. And given that they haven't change use hasn't occurred, there's no vacancies, they're still all being rented out either or owner occupied, generating obviously a business on site. To me, it is a lesser location. There's lesser exposure, that argument doesn't hold. The market would show that by vacancies, the market would show that by change of use. And it hasn't done that ever since that strip of was closed off. So Chief Peg was extension kind of thing. So for me, I don't feel that's a warranted consideration that the board should give. It's up to you whether you want to follow the order that you relied on for or give out for the realty side. But what I see, the realty side was very reasonable. The location here is a very good location, and the rents that are in different areas of the city on higher traffic areas are reasonable. So with that, I'll leave it up to you. Thank you.
Okay, summation, Mr. Hersborough.
Yes, please. Thank you. So for this property, I mean, I've looked into the market, and I've analyzed this property. That's why I've submitted a full disclosure here. The assessor has submitted one page and has relied on the previous decision that the board made. That decision's been appealed to the municipal board. I'm here on a matter of principle. The realty's done. We've appealed it to the municipal board. Ultimately, the business tax bill here isn't significant, and I'm not asking for a significant reduction. The property's been overassessed, and the city, time and time again, they have tunnel vision. They look at a couple of properties. For the last property we were talking about, you look at one single property and you say, well, this is the market rent. That's not the way the market works. Mr. Paul is speaking to vacancy and how strong this market is. Well, if he had any evidence of that, he would have submitted it. He doesn't have any evidence of it. He's just offered speculation, and more speculation. I've given the board solid market evidence, and I hope that the board sees that this property's been overassessed, and I thank you all for your time today.
Okay, thank you. We've now heard all the items on today's agenda, so this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you for your capable presentations, as usual.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you-
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.